Well, violence against women and girls is one of the most prevalent human rights violations in the world. A key number out today from a UN report is that in the last year, one woman or girl was killed every 10 minutes by either an intimate partner or a family member. We are inviting now onto the show Raphaelle Rafin. She is a policy specialist with UN Women. Raphaelle, thank you so much for making time for us today.
Thank you for covering this important day.
Well, I appreciate that. It is an important story, and I'm just looking over some of the information you all have put out today, Raphaelle. So we mentioned one woman is killed every 10 minutes. A third of women will acknowledge that they've been subjected to some form of violence in their lifetime. Female genital mutilation is up 15% compared to numbers last 8 years ago, and 70% of all women in a conflict zone, so if we think Haiti, we think Sudan, Ukraine, or Gaza, are experiencing gender-based violence. It seems to me that things are not getting better, Raphaelle. What do you think?
This is unfortunately what we see today. The more data we are able to collect, the more evidence that we gather show that, unfortunately, the rates of violence against women and girls, and as you said, it takes many different forms, and it manifests itself in different settings differently, with unfortunately higher risk levels and higher rates in the most fragile contexts. Well, unfortunately, this is not decreasing at all. So it really is a call for us to ask member states and beyond them, the global community, because everyone has a role to play to really accelerate progress to eliminating violence against women and girls. All member states pledged by 2030, violence against women and girls will be eliminated. As you mentioned, we haven't seen progress in terms of actual violence experienced by women and girls so far. So it is now time to accelerate action.
And when you make these calls, is there a response of saying, yes, we absolutely need to do something and this is what we're going to do? Or what is the reaction you get?
Thank you. I'm actually calling just behind this wall is the General Assembly of the United Nations that is gathering today for a special high-level event to gather and hear from member states what they've done and what they're going to prioritize to make sure that concrete action and concrete results are taken to eliminate violence against women and girls. And we see some important strides that have been taken in the past years in terms of the number of laws, for instance, that have been adopted, or national action plans that propose to adopt and implement a comprehensive approach to eliminating violence against women and girls. But these need resources, these need to be actually implemented and effectively tracked. And these needs to come with a focus on prevention to make sure that violence against women doesn't happen in the first place.
Raphaelle, let me ask you, because this is a global crisis, as you've mentioned, women anywhere and everywhere are subject to abuse. But I wonder, are there regions of specific concern in your work where you're seeing things are really bad in these particular locations? And if you could share a couple of examples with us.
Well, unfortunately, as you said, it is a universal issue and no societies today is exempt from violence against women and girls. We can see different manifestations in different regions based on cultures and historic backgrounds and environments, but it really is a systemic issue. Where we're more concerned, as you mentioned, is in those fragile contexts. So when we think of humanitarian places or conflict-related areas, where we know that the rates of gender-based violence is double the rate it is in more stable and peaceful environments. So it is really our main concern that women and girls in those fragile settings are not left behind and receive priority care and attention.
You know, when you and I have this conversation and I use numbers like 1 in 10 women or a third of women or 736 million women who have acknowledged being subject to abuse, they're just numbers. And I wonder if you're able to tell us stories or humanize those women and girls who are part of the story you're trying to tell.
Thank you so much. And it is a very critical point that we need to make. We need to indeed share the numbers and show how prevalent this is, but we also need to keep reminding that behind each of these data points is an actual woman, an actual girl whose life has been taken or whose life is just stolen from her because of this violence, and again, through all the different forms it's taken. As you mentioned today, we're releasing new data on femicide, so which is the killing of a woman or of a girl just because she is a woman or a girl. And that is usually the end result of a long cycle of violence that has been perpetrated against these women and girls before. Unfortunately, we have too many high-profile cases of women and girls who have been assaulted and attacked. And one of the most recent one this year, if you remember over the summer, Ms. Shepteke, who was an Olympian athlete who competed in the Paris Olympics, and a few weeks later got killed by her former partner because she wanted to separate.
And brutally attacked.
Very brutally. Sorry.
No, please go ahead. But I just want to remind the audience who would not necessarily remember the story. If I'm not mistaken, she was set on fire and she was in the hospital for a long time in severe pain before she died.
That is correct. It is often brutal murders because of the motive, because it is a hatred crime. It is not a random killing. It comes from a long history, usually, of abusive relationships, and it takes place in that context where the perpetrator of the killing really wants the victim to suffer in addition to taking their lives. So it is important to remember that it is individuals who are talking about. And we have many cases and can share more and would encourage everybody to listen and to these stories, which are, again, unfortunately present around the world.
Raphaelle Rafin, thank you very much for your time. Good luck with your work.
Thank you very much. And thank you, everyone, for your mobilization.
At the Ontario Legislature today, members of the provincial NDP called on the government to declare an epidemic of intimate partner violence. CBC's Megan Fitzpatrick is at the Toronto Legislature with the details.
Well, this is something the NDP has been trying to get the government to do for a long time now. They're reviving the issue again today because it is the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women. And so they're highlighting again their effort to have this declaration made and for the government to pass Bill 173. This is a bill that the NDP proposed back in the spring that very simply says that the province should make this declaration. And to date, the government has always resisted these calls to do so. In question period this morning, the NDP tried once again. Leader Marit Stiles proposed or sought unanimous consent from the legislature to immediately make this declaration, and there was not unanimous consent given, so it was rejected once again. The legislature did, however, hold a moment of silence to honor the lives lost in Ontario this past year to intimate partner violence. At a news conference this morning, NDP MPPs were joined by representatives of several legal organizations that are advocating for this declaration to be made. And they say it wouldn't just be a symbolic move to do this, that there would be real, practical, legal implications. We heard at the news conference legal experts saying when a survivor has to go to court for a restraining order, for example, or when it has to do with custody battles with their children, if such a declaration was made, it would help strengthen their arguments. It would shift the starting point for their legal arguments if there was already a declaration that there was an epidemic across the province. Listen to this legal expert.
When we have a declaration that says this is an epidemic, then we are expecting adjudicators to understand that they have to start from the assumption that it is important, which takes the onus away from the survivor and places it squarely with those who are making decisions that have serious consequences for our most vulnerable survivors.
We also heard from legal experts who work in the housing sector and who also work with children as well, all urging the government to do this. More than 100 municipalities have made this declaration. And as we were hearing at that news conference this morning, Natasha, they're all saying it's about time that the province follows suit.
And so what are we hearing from the provincial government in terms of this request?
Well, when it has been proposed, and when it was proposed a few months ago, the government did agree to send Bill 173 to a committee, but they kind of created a subcommittee to study the issue of intimate partner violence in general. They've been hearing from experts and various organizations, but they haven't yet really tackled Bill 173 itself. The NDP is accusing the government of dragging its feet on this. Now, Premier Doug Ford was asked at a separate news conference this morning about the delay and why the government won't just go ahead and agree to make this declaration. Let's play Doug Ford's response.
I have 4 daughters, and anyone ever touch my daughters, it'd be the worst day of their lives, and that's for anyone out there. It's unacceptable, and I have zero tolerance for any sort of violence against women or anyone in that fact.
That was all he said. So he didn't directly answer the question about why it's taking so long for the committee to study this issue, why the government won't go ahead and make the declaration. The NDP is saying they can do both things at the same time. You can continue that study if they want, keep hearing from experts, even though there have been plenty of studies done before, including the coroner's inquest that was done in Ontario just a few years ago following the tragic murder of 3 women. One of its key recommendations was for the province to declare intimate partner violence an epidemic. The opposition critics are saying the government doesn't need to reinvent the wheel. There are plenty of studies done. Experts have proposed many solutions and said what is needed to help tackle this issue. Kristen Wong-Tam, one of the NDP MPPs we heard from this morning at the news conference, saying she's losing faith in this process, especially at the committee. She's saying the government, which has a majority on the committee and in the legislature, is curtailing the amount of time opposition MPPs have to ask questions. Originally, they were supposed to travel to go meet with some survivors in person. They're no longer going to be permitted to do that. Survivors are going to be asked to testify over Zoom. There's a lot of concerns around that we heard from MPP Wong-Tam. So the opposition not happy with how this process is going at committee. And again, they're reiterating that both things can be done at the same time. There's no excuse, they said, for the government to not make this declaration.
CBC's Megan Fitzpatrick in Toronto.